It's time to rumble. It's time for the Royal Rumble. Participants include Blackjack, Vegas, WWR co-host, Will. It's every man for himself in the Royal Rumble. It's time to rumble.
Welcome, Realm family, to another episode of Wrestling with the Realm podcast. I'm Brian, one half of the Power and Glory of Wrestling podcast, and on the other side, he's the Hercules to my Paul Roma. It's my guy Will. Will, what are we talking about?
Guys, me and Brian almost had a whole podcast
We
before
did.
even starting this podcast. We got our Rumble 91 review. I'm super excited for this one. I really enjoyed this pay-per-view. Brian, the match we were just talking about, the Rockers defeat the Orient Express. Brian, to me, this is an absolute banger of a
Yeah.
match. This would stand the time in any generation of wrestling. I felt like this was a modern day tag match like we have on the ones on SmackDown currently with that division. Brian, what are your thoughts on this match?
For sure. I mean, it was funny watching this match. My wife was watching some of this with me, and in this match in particular, at one point I went, man, they're all ahead of their time in this match. The Rockers and the Orient Express are both, it's my first note, they are ahead of their time. And that Orient Express can flat out work. I
Mm-hmm.
think about Orient Express because we just talked about them in our WrestleMania 6 Retro Rewatch. And they started that pay-per-view. I think they started that one too with the Rockers. I think
Yeah,
Orient Express went over in that match, but it was the same thing where these guys work great together regardless of who it is. In this match, you have Tanaka and Kato, and in WrestleMania 6, it was Sato and Tanaka. But regardless of who you put in there with the Orient Express, man, they can flat out work and they can work with the
yes.
Rockers. I mean, it's kind of crazy it's kind of crazy in this match to see just how far ahead these guys were because you're so right that this match could have been on SmackDown or Raw today in 2025
Yeah.
and it would not seem out of place. I mean, they had good spots in this match. Um, they had Orient Express had a really cool leapfrog into a choke on Shawn Michaels on the top rope. I don't know if I've seen that before. I don't think I have, but I was like, that was a really cool spot that you don't always see. And it's one of those examples of some of this older stuff guys can look at today and start picking and choosing some of this stuff to
Yeah.
kind of put in your bag. Because sometimes we do get to the too high flying and too choreographed gymnastics, as Jim Cornette would say, where sometimes if you take some of these quote unquote older moves or move sets and incorporate them in, like you really get a good, well rounded match. And I think that's why this one works so well, is because we see the stuff we're used to today, but you also have a really good pace to it without it being boring in the quote slow parts.
Yeah, and that's one of my notes is I felt like at certain points in this match it would hit that level. Like I have over here in my notes written the spot in the corner where they're just Irish whipping each other
Yes.
back and forth. And I'm pretty sure Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty take a backslide and land on their feet off of it
Yep.
and Irish whip them into each other. That's insane
Yep.
stuff. And then 3 minutes later, we're back into a sleeper hold. This match had a lot of sleeper holds.
Hmm.
And I felt like that's just kind of the time we were in. If you go later in this pay per view, when we talk about the world title match, Sergeant Slaughter loves a bear hug. That man
Oh,
will crank a bear hug all day.
you must have been looking at my notes, Will.
Yeah. And I just feel like this match didn't need those spots all the time. When it hit that next gear, it should have stayed in that next gear. but I feel like that is all just in a testament to the time they were working in. Each match needed a spot like that, it felt like.
Yeah.
That's me being super nitpicky on what is a match that's just way too ahead of its time. I want to give a shout out too to a person, and this is a hot take I'm coming at you guys with. This is my favorite 80s and 90s manager. Mr. Fuji is my
Yeah.
GOAT.
Okay.
That is my GOAT. He might be my favorite manager of all time.
Wow.
He is just so on point all the time. He doesn't miss his spots. He hit him with what did he hit him with in this pay per view? I know I have
With
it written
Kane.
down. Yeah, it was the cane. He
Yeah.
hit him with the cane. I love Mr. Fuji, and maybe it's because Sam is such a big Yoko guy.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up on a lot of Mr. Fuji in my teenage days. Like just when Sam was 6 years old, we were watching WrestleMania 9, which is hilarious.
Yes.
I love Fuji. That's my guy. So shout out to him. I love this match. I thought it was great. Do you have any more notes on it?
Yeah, like I'm with you 100%. I mean, this is a great match. Couple of my other notes that I had on this. There was a really cool spot. The Orient Express is using a black belt as a weapon, trying to clothesline Sean, and Sean counters it in such a cool way that you get both members of Orient Express to fall into each other. Like there was just a lot of really cool visual things that they were able to do
Mhm.
with these four guys. Like they had a lot of really cool spots in this match, and I can't give it up to these guys enough. Man, you could
Yeah,
see why they like to start pay-per-views with these teams.
yeah, 100%. And as time goes on, this is something they lean on.
Hmm.
So, yeah, great groups. I have a note, Brian. I know
Yep,
you love covering the commentary.
I do.
I have a commentary note. I did my homework on this.
Okay.
Uh, Gorilla and Roddy
Hmm.
remind me so much of Pat and Michael.
Yep.
This is very Pat and Michael like. This is the blueprint for it.
Yep.
And I know you have had your gripes about Pat recently being very over the top. Roddy is so over the top in this pay-per-view. He I have more notes later on when we actually get to the
Yep.
Rumble, but I really enjoyed both of them on commentary. I don't know about you if this is something very similar to Pat where you didn't enjoy it as much because Roddy was extremely over the top.
You saying that was something I was realizing when I was rewatching this. So I'm
Hmm.
glad that you brought it up. Everybody, what Will is saying about this, when you go back and you watch Royal Rumble 91 and then you come back and finish listening to us, you'll understand exactly what he's saying because it's so true. Michael Cole is very much gorillaing it up when you see it in right side by side with Gorilla and Piper, and you're dead on with Pat because Piper was so hyped up in this pay per view. I mean, he was just like geeked from the beginning, and he was so big and over the top, just like Pat. And there was a certain point in this pay per view. I don't know exactly where it was. I think it was after Warrior and Sarge, where I was like, okay, I'll leave Pat alone because
Yeah.
I love it when it's Piper. Seeing it was kind of fun to go back and see that and have that realization that I get what Pat's doing, and if you look at it in this context, it really is. All of our commentary guys today are almost fill-ins for the people from the past. Wade Barrett is Jesse, but I'm totally with you. I noticed it too.
Pat being so over the top in today's wrestling when it's supposed to be so serious, that might be the gripe that you have, and I'm starting to feel
Yeah.
that way about him sometimes. These pay-per-views, like if you look at the guys behind us, you got Big Boss Man over there. That's a dude
Yeah.
literally dressed up as a cop. And that's my guy. And we'll talk about him in a few minutes. He had a banger of a match
Yes, he
too.
did.
But Pat is so Piper like we're trying to switch to more of a sports like presentation in WWE, that sometimes this over the topness, there's no place for it anymore. But in these pay per views, when you have the Earthquake and Big Boss
Mhm.
Man and Sergeant Slaughter, you have more of these gimmick characters. That over the topness is more acceptable, I feel like. I felt like it was really well done by Piper during this pay per view.
Yeah, you're like that's a great like that is such a great explanation of both sides of it with the
Yeah.
commentary guys in 91 doing this and then today. And I think you're right with why it feels out of place because we try to present the product differently today. And sometimes commentary doesn't feel like it's fitting that. And it's like, that's kind of okay. We don't need to go too far into the we're presenting this as a sporting event. It's still entertainment at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So maybe that pendulum is swinging back towards the little bit lighter fare and not as serious as we've been. And I would be okay with that because going
Yeah.
back and watching these, I go sometimes it's fun just to turn your brain off and get lost in it than to have the final boss beating Cody with a weight belt outside.
Well, let's move on to our next segment. Brian, I'm gonna let you take us into this one because I know you have some notes on this segment. You were pretty excited to talk about it.
There's an underlying story and theme that has been going on leading up to this Royal Rumble and going through this Royal Rumble. Ultimate Warrior is champion after defeating Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 6. Macho King, Randy Savage, and sensational Queen Sherry would really like a title shot against the Ultimate Warrior. And that's what Macho King has been hoping for. And going into this Royal Rumble, he has not received that title shot from the Warrior yet. So Ultimate Warrior is going to wrestle Sergeant Slaughter on this night. So Sherry comes out. Now they're doing this on like a platform out in the crowd. And Mean Gene Okerlund is there with his little microphone. Warrior is there. Sherry comes out. And Sherry really, really, really wants him to say that he'll give Macho King a title shot if he retains his championship belt tonight at the Royal Rumble. Because Sergeant Slaughter already said that if he wins, he's going to give Macho King a title shot. So please, Warrior, won't you give me a title shot? Please, I'm begging you to give me a title shot. And what does the Ultimate Warrior say, Will?
Oh my gosh, I have this in my notes. He says no in the funniest. He's like, no.
Is
I
that, I love that you did the shoulder gyrations too.
man, this segment was good. It was good, but there were
Yes.
some things in it that had me laughing. One of the compliments that Scary Sherry, as Piper called her,
Yes.
that she tried to give Warrior was that he was yellow from the top of his head to the bottom of his toes.
Or are you yellow? Are you yellow warrior? Will you give him the championship match? Yeah, it's so good.
It is so good. It's a funny segment. And then we cut to the back and Macho is livid about this.
Yes.
He was raging about it.
He goes nuts in the locker room. He is so mad that Warrior will not give him a title shot. So my notes that I have written down on this segment in particular, I know we're doing a retro rewatch of Royal Rumble 91, so if anybody thought I wasn't going to get any Liv Morgan in, oh, you thought wrong. You thought wrong. Point being, when you go back and you see this segment and you see that Sherry is using her feminine wiles to try to convince Warrior for this title match, it dawned on me watching it this time, and I wrote down, I was like, oh, Liv clearly has some Sherry that she draws from. And I really noticed it in this spot in particular the way that Sherry is trying to get Warrior to give her the match, and she's using every trick in the book that she has. It just felt so much to me like the segment that Rhea, Dom, and Liv had, where it was when Dom and Rhea were still together, and they're in the ring, and Liv is up in the crowd, and she says, hot guys like Dom don't like girls who look like you. They like girls who look like me. And she's, after seeing Sherry, I go, she is so sensational Sherry. Like she has a definite element that she draws from for that. And it
Yeah.
works really well with this character that she plays. And like that's a big kudos to Sherry because she's really, really good at what she does. And she might be the MVP of this pay-per-view by the time everything is all said and done. So kudos to you, Sherry.
Yeah, Sherry is the MVP of this pay-per-view, I will say it. I have a question. Why so we'll get to it later with the whole number 18 thing and the fact that Macho doesn't come out for the Rumble,
Yep.
interferes and he's helps Slaughter win. Spoiler alert, guys, I'm sorry. But does he just is he just trying to bamboozle his way into a title shot without competing in the Rumble? And my next question is there's no talk or very little about the Rumble winner. And this might be my problem with the actual Rumble, which I don't have many. It was a good Rumble. Why isn't it very like eminent that the person that wins the Rumble is going to go face Slaughter at WrestleMania? Was that not something they did back then, or less?
Correct.
Okay,
That was not established that the winner will get a title shot at WrestleMania until Yokozuna won it going into WrestleMania 9. That
okay,
was the first year when they actually had that stipulation. Otherwise, I mean, it was kind of unofficial almost at this point, especially because we get into a run of these here where Hogan has to win and Hogan's going to be in your main event. So it was kind of de facto the winner would get a championship match, but it's not
okay.
like it was not a thing yet.
Yeah, okay. That makes a lot more sense because this whole story plot about them Macho trying to bamboozle a title shot out of both of them does not make much sense with it being on Royal Rumble night when he could just enter the Rumble and win. But thank you for answering that question for me because this all makes so much more sense to me now. Well, let's get closer to that championship match. And we have a singles contest between my guy, the Big Boss Man. Everybody,
Little
I'm
big
still
boss
looking
man.
for that T-shirt. So if you find that T-shirt in a large size, put the link down below. I need that Big Boss Man T-shirt. So we have Big Boss Man versus the Barbarian with your guy, Bobby the Brain, out there, who
Yes,
is
Bobby.
an absolute legend himself. But man, I was not expecting an absolute classic between these two, but it was good. It was really good. They were out there for almost 15 minutes
Yeah.
and didn't feel like they missed a beat. I have that kind of my shock with the match. I can kind of describe as Boss Man's in his prime here.
Yep.
This is prime Big Boss Man. He is moving around that ring
Mhm.
super well, and I have it written down that he sells so well for the Barbarian. The way he sold the Barbarian's pile driver
Yes.
was amazing.
Yes.
It was great. And I think it was Roddy says, "Oh, he was 6 inches off the ground with that
Yes.
pile driver." Just doing a
Yes.
great job selling it on
Yep.
commentary. Boss Man was great. And I think the Barbarian just shocked me. I wasn't familiar with the Barbarian's game, and I gotta apologize because I feel like I should be. I feel like this is a guy that should have also been pushed, maybe with his in ring capability. You can kind of fill me in on the Barbarian because I clearly do not know enough.
I mean, I was listening to Bruce Pritchard um, on their podcast over there at Something to Wrestle With. I was listening to the Royal Rumble 91 um, to hear some of that background stuff. And I don't think it was on that episode, but there was one recently that I was listening to, and Bruce was talking about Barbarian. And that Barbarian is one of those guys that he is just the true definition of a solid mid carder. Like we've talked about this before, in that he never had anything to get him to those high highs, and but he was definitely not somebody who was just the bottom of the barrel. You know, he always worked. He went to WCW after here. Like he worked and he was that guy. Like he's exactly what you thought he would be. I don't know if maybe he didn't talk so good on promos because you never really see him shoot a promo. That's why you have him with Bobby Heenan.
Yeah,
Um, but his work in the ring, he sells, he can move, he's got a cool look.
yeah,
And when you put him with Bobby the Brain Heenan, he's over as a heel because Bobby is just over like Rover as a heel, man. Like he is so red hot at this time in wrestling. Like he's the GOAT. You got Fuji in there, Paul Heyman is in there,
yeah.
and Paul Heyman definitely takes a lot of Bobby Heenan, and I think he'd probably be the first one to tell you
Oh,
that Bobby is the GOAT. Uh just and speaking of Bobby, look at Bobby's outfit in this match. That outfit is lit. Seth
yeah,
Rollins would be jealous of that outfit, like Bobby was styling. Uh, but oh, there's a great note in this match, Will. Here's what I wrote. I'm all for the retro moves, but the bear hug is so dumb.
yeah. And they're
So
not locking it in. They're
yeah,
just kind of hugging them.
yep.
And I have it that Boss Man hulks up out of the bear hug and then bites him. It's
Like
just it's crazy. I do not like the bear hug. I'm happy is a move that we don't really use anymore. I'm with it. I'm with that take. Great take.
I really feel like this is a match that one, you're right about Boss Man. Like Boss Man is trimmed down here. He's
Hmm.
moving, he's quick. Everything just looks so good. He is so good at throwing like those throat chops that
Yeah.
Cody likes to drop like Goldust does.
Hmm.
And Boss Man just does that standing version of that, and it just looks so good. Um, I wrote a pile driver. Damn, are they cool? Because we
Yeah.
don't see pile drivers anymore, and we see a few of them in this pay-per-view. There's so many things that I miss. I miss pile drivers. In this match, we get the checking the arm 3 times. I think that's during the bear hug.
Yes.
And I wrote down that I miss checking the arm to drop 3 times. I miss that. We don't do that anymore. Now we just walk up and the referee's like, yeah, they're out. You got to ring the bell. Or they're tapping. Like I like when they're fading and we have to test the arm.
Yeah.
So theatrical. And one thing that I will knock this pay-per-view for, and it's one of the things you liked so much about WrestleMania 6, is that they did such a good job of giving you vignettes and
Yeah.
video packages to show you the story that's leading up. And they do it slightly for a few things, but this Boss Man match in particular was such a cool little story that they had working. The whole reason for this match is because Bobby Heenan insulted Big Boss Man's mom. Like that was the
Oh,
angle, is that he insulted Boss Man's mom. So now Bobby Heenan was going to get it, and that leads into this match. And this is their little blow off match for this little story. It's a cool little story, and I wish that they would have shown us the build up to that because I think it makes this match even more fun. I think this match is great, and the pay per view is off to a great start. This is a good one.
yes, it is. I have a few notes on this match, and I just first want to say I agree with you. As a person coming in not knowing a whole lot about the lead up to this pay per view, I just was lost at points with certain storylines that they did such a good job presenting that at WrestleMania 6.
Yeah.
Like, and at certain points I was just a little lost. I really was. But a few notes from this match. Bossman spits on Bobby the Brain and the crowd goes
Love it.
crazy. And to talk about Bossman, who's in peak shape, he does a clothesline over the top rope and doesn't really stumble much because he goes over
Yep.
with him.
Yes.
And that's a Bossman classic. But he just looks so sharp doing it. He looks super athletic during this match. And I honestly don't often like roll up finishes. But when you're protecting Barbarian, a good
Exactly.
way for that is that Boss Man at the end of the match is not even kicking out anymore. He's grabbing the ropes. And that's something I really like that where we talk about the drama part of it.
Yep.
We don't have a whole lot of that anymore, like the rope grab or the foot on the rope. Shout out Nia and Tiffany.
Yeah.
They did a spot
Yep.
recently, and it was really good.
It was.
Because I think everyone after that was the second annihilator of the match thought it was
Yep.
over. Tiffany grabs the rope, just like here. I thought the match was over and Boss Man wasn't going over. Puts the foot on the rope, grabs the rope, and then a great way to protect Barbarian is he goes for that flying cross body, and Boss Man's just able to flip his momentum, and then one,
Yeah.
2, 3. Great match. Like you said, pay-per-view is off to a great start.
100%.
We are going straight into the Sergeant Slaughter Ultimate Warrior match, but before that, we need to talk about two legendary promos that are cut before this match. Sergeant Slaughter talks about how he is going to rule over the WWF, and he constantly refers to the Ultimate Warrior as the Ultimate Puke.
Yes.
Why he does this, I have no clue. For such a serious character, for him to have this third grader roast of the Ultimate Warrior is so early 90s, late 80s of him. That's why I love this generation of wrestling. On the other hand, you have the Ultimate Warrior. And at the beginning of this, I was like, wow. And I'm going to let you guys in on this. I'm not a huge Warrior guy. I don't like the gimmick. I feel like it's very Hogan ripoff-ish.
Ooh.
But Warrior starts cutting a promo about how the only people he takes orders from is the Warriors on his back. And that's why I say it's very Hulk Hogan like. He
Yeah.
calls his fans the Warriors opposed to the Hulkamaniacs. But it
You
very
and we really saw that in the
yeah,
WrestleMania 6 Retro Rewatch when they were cutting their promos before that match. You're so right, where it's almost like Ultimate Warrior is just the opposite side of the same coin with
yeah.
him and Hogan, because it really is. Yeah, that's so true. It's a good point, Will.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just Hogan
Mhm.
did it first, but as
Yeah.
Hogan would get jazzed up for a promo, Warrior starts getting jazzed up. And he is getting really into this promo. And I don't take any orders except the orders from the Warriors on my back. And then he does the weirdest, he stops talking and he does the weirdest snort thing you could have possibly done in that moment because he was so out of breath from it's not hooking up, but warrioring it up.
Warrioring it up.
I don't know what it's called. But two absolutely phenomenal promos before this match. Brian, you got anything on these promos?
Like, they're so good. And Sergeant Slaughter is such a good promo and this gimmick. So Will and I haven't hit on this yet on this pay-per-view, but this was 1991. We had the skirmish in the Persian Gulf with Saddam Hussein. It was not a war yet when this Royal Rumble came out. So you have this Sergeant Slaughter character who now is an American turncoat and an Iraqi sympathizer. And that's the gimmick and the storyline you're going to go with, is that you're looking towards Hogan, the ultimate American red, white, and blue when it comes crashing down and it hurts inside, versus the ultimate bad person in the perception of the world because he's an Iraqi sympathizer. So that's the story that they've decided they're going to go with. During this pay-per-view is when an actual declaration of war happens. President Bush goes on TV and announces it, and it's like, uh-oh, now what do we do? Because we're getting into some real world stuff. And for better or for worse, this is the road that they stuck with. There was a lot of people who weren't happy about it. There was other people who, were in favor of continuing the storyline. But it stirred up a little bit of controversy at the time. Even as a kid, I kind of remember that it was like, wow, this is kind of a really hot button issue. But at the same time, you can tell from the crowd it was over. Like
Yeah.
that whole storyline and that gimmick was over. And I kind of get it because if you are planning out your WrestleMania and you're getting all of your ducks in a row, this particular pay-per-view, and I think it's why it's so good, is that it sets up so much going forward with storylines. You blow off a few storylines here, but and we'll get to it with Dusty and Ted DiBiase and Dustin and Virgil. We'll get there, but that's another piece of this where you have this match between the Ultimate Warrior and Sergeant Slaughter has such implications on your main stories going to WrestleMania because we have to go with Warrior Macho King. So like I get the idea that it's like we're too far in this to pull the plug on it because it's not just the Hogan Slaughter angle. It's all of these other ones that have shot off of that. It had to be a weird situation to kind of try to navigate of do we continue with this story or not? But I get why you would, but I get why some people had doubts about it, but it was over. And in these promos, you kind of get that. Like Slaughter is he's doing a lot of work getting this villainous Iraqi sympathizer over. Warrior, my note is always crazy, but damn, it works. Because that dude, just like you said, like it's crazy and it's over the top. Or like his promos weren't long, but they were just enough where you kind of get that sugar high. And his matches were the same way. He runs out, he shakes the rope, he's full of energy. He hits a couple of big spots that, again, are big power moves and a lot of energy, and you get hyped up. And then it's over. It's when you get him into longer stuff where he gets into trouble. I did want to touch on Sergeant Slaughter has General Adnan with him. Now, General Adnan is somebody who can work, who's in the business, but just happened to be a genuine Iraqi, and his brother was actually in the Iraqi military at this time. So I guess there was an interview with Sergeant Slaughter that I was listening to, and he was saying that General Adnan, uh, they would get all the Iraqi flags and like the military fatigues that he would wear from General Adnan's brother in Iraq. He would send all that stuff over. So like they were really going for an authentic look, and General Adnan does kick it up a notch because he does have a resemblance to Saddam Hussein and just fits that part, speaks the language, and it really amplified that heel of Sergeant Slaughter. And man, it was over. It was over.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about it because I wasn't around for any of that stuff. Just from a character standpoint, I do enjoy the type of heel that Sergeant Slaughter is. I have it down in my notes that I thought it was kind of refreshing in the sense that he's a similar heel to a Gunther. I know it's a little bit later in the match, but he actually does some targeting of Warrior's back. So
Yep.
he puts him in the bear hug, which we've already talked about.
Yeah.
We don't rock with the bear hug here on WWR. It's a stupid move. It just looks
Yes.
like give him Warrior a hug because he really loved him.
And it makes no sense. That
Yeah,
that move makes no sense in the world.
he was just, and he wasn't even really squeezing him the
No, he
whole
wasn't.
match. But, after that, he puts him in it. And then he starts dropping bows to the back, and Piper's really selling it. Man, Slaughter would have had this match won if he would have covered him about
Yeah.
5 minutes ago. So, once again, shout out to the commentary
Yep.
team. Do such a good job on this pay per view. But I just think that that type of heel that targets and the babyface is selling the injury like Warrior did throughout the rest of the match. That type of stuff is really refreshing. We don't get that as much in this
Yeah.
generation of wrestling. You are very critical when someone is selling a leg or an ankle,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes they switch it up and they don't even know which one they're supposed to be selling anymore.
Yeah, it takes
So
me out of it.
yeah, and I don't blame you because me seeing this totally got me understanding where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So great job from Sergeant Slaughter. I'll rewind it a little bit to the beginning of this match. Warrior comes in with that hot start you're talking about, and he ducks the flag, and he is giving it to Slaughter pretty much all match. I have it in my notes that he should have been disqualified.
Yeah.
He uses, I don't know, that's happened a few times in this pay-per-view at this point, where we have normal matches
Mm-hmm.
where there's props that these people bring to the ring,
Yes.
like a flag or something similar. In the Rockers match, it happened.
Yes.
This match, it happened. And Warrior hits him with it. I'm like, is that not a disqualification? But of course, with wrestling, that even happens in this generation's wrestling too, where there's stuff that happens in a main event or a championship match where you're like, that's supposed to be DQ. I remember
Yep.
at SummerSlam, Cody 2 years ago, or it might even be 3 years ago. It's crazy how time's flying. Picks up the steel steps, hits Brock Lesnar with them, and the match just keeps going. I'm like,
Yeah.
isn't that supposed to be DQ? Very similar spot in this match. But I also highlighted the fact that Slaughter sells so well for Ultimate Warrior. Maybe you can fill me in on that. Is this something that he always does, or was he just on his A game tonight?
I mean, what you see Slaughter in this match, this is pretty much what you get out of a Sergeant Slaughter match, and he actually was kind of like getting a little bit back into shape here. I thought he was moving around good in the ring, and I thought that he was able to tell a good story in the ring because he can sell so well, and he just really he really can exude that heel like you were saying, he's targeting a spot on Ultimate Warrior, and then you got Piper who's helping sell it. Like all of that really works when you have all of the ingredients just right. And this is probably on par, I would say, with what you get from a Sergeant Slaughter match. I think the more impressive thing is that Warrior is selling as much as he is. I have it on right
Yeah.
now in front of me, and that match is on, and it's kind of surprising that he's selling as much and as well as he is in a match that he knows he's not going over in. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how much they had to pay him for that or what conversation was had, but this is like the most selling I've seen Warrior do. So, kudos to you, Warrior. You were selling.
Yeah, this was, and the biggest thing about this match is the fact that from beginning to end, even though I walked into this match, first of all, not remembering the winner of this match, and second, being very surprised because we talk about Macho and Sherry, and we've already mentioned that Sherry is kind of the MVP of this pay per view.
Yeah.
This match is entertaining from beginning to end, from the hot start with Warrior to Sherry getting involved in the beginning and then going back, and then Sherry getting involved again,
Yep.
getting gorilla pressed by the Ultimate Warrior.
So heel.
It's so heel of him.
Yeah.
I mean, what are we doing, Ultimate Warrior? That's not that's not very babyface of you. That's not very Hulk Hogan of you. who I compare you to, even though Hulk did a bunch of heel stuff.
Yes, he does.
That's for a whole different episode. But Sherry gets gorilla pressed into Macho and just all these spots. And then we eventually get to Macho. I want you to say it because I can't do it like you.
Swung for the fences, uh-huh. Laid into it just a little bit.
Absolutely obliterating Warrior with the scepter. And
Gotta make it look believable, yeah.
and then the 1, 2, 3 after one more elbow from Slaughter. I honestly didn't even remember that Slaughter won this match, even though back in the day when I was growing up, WWE 2K16 had a WrestleMania mode, and you had to be, I believe it was Hogan, and you had to beat Sergeant Slaughter. So, and he was the champion back then. So I should remember this stuff, guys, but sometimes you forget as you're watching the pay-per-view. And I was like, I sat up in my seat. I was like, whoa, wait, really? They took the belt off Warrior and gave it to Slaughter? And the crowd couldn't have been more hot. And
Yeah.
maybe it's because some of the stuff that you were saying
Yeah.
earlier that the real life started blending in. But man, sometimes in WWE, you just go for the heat. When you don't have much, you just go for the heat. And they got it. And this was the loudest reaction of the whole entire night, which is crazy to say because we have some pretty big pops in the Rumble, but nothing quite like this. The crowd was furious.
Yeah, the crowd, like you could really tell from this point going forward in the pay-per-view that there was something up with the crowd. Like they were still trying to recover from Ultimate Warrior losing. Like it was a shock. I'm so happy that you were kind of surprised by it that you didn't remember because I was watching it and I'm like, oh man, I wonder if Will's gonna remember or know that Ultimate Warrior loses because it is really surprising. But the way that they do it is they've been telling a story the whole pay-per-view with Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior and Sergeant Slaughter has been part of that, and now Sergeant Slaughter becomes a bigger player going forward. Like this pay-per-view works so well because you can watch it from beginning to end, and you already got one story told to you, whether you knew what was going on before or not. It all gets told to you in the beginning. We find out that Macho King wants a match with Warrior. If he wins, he sends Sherry out. We see how angry he is when Ultimate Warrior says no. And then you fast forward to this match, and you go, it makes sense for Macho King because Sergeant Slaughter had already told him he's the number one contender and gets a match if he beats Ultimate Warrior. So it makes sense that Macho King would help Slaughter win because he knows he's going to get a title shot. And he's taking out some revenge on Ultimate Warrior for gorilla slamming Sherry. At least that's the way that I see it, because that was so wrong that he did that. Like Macho was totally vindicated with what he did. Um, but Macho gets a little revenge on Ultimate Warrior because he wouldn't give him a match. But they're telling that story, and that moves us to WrestleMania after this, where Macho Man is going to start doing more commentary and not being a in-ring regular. So we have to find a way to tell that story to get him out of the ring. So they're going to have a retirement match with him and Ultimate Warrior. And we turn him babyface at the end of that with Miss Elizabeth, and it's great. It's one of the biggest pops ever. So great. I talk about it all the time. But you started telling a good story about Sergeant Slaughter and Ultimate Warrior with Macho Man on the outside. Like now we're in the middle of that story, and it's set up perfectly to move forward to WrestleMania. Like it's really a great job of the booking getting that right. And they do that a lot in this pay-per-view. And Macho King and Sherry are like the MVPs of this whole pay-per-view, um, because Macho Man helps sell the story that they're telling. All of them. He's helping tell Sarge's story, Warriors, and his own just by what he's doing. And that can't be understated enough. Just how good he and Sherry are, especially in this pay-per-view.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to call Sherry the MVP, I absolutely do not blame you.
Yeah,
We can go maybe up next to my MVP of this whole pay-per-view. But let's talk about a pretty stellar match. Coco Beware versus your guy, the Mountie. This is a good match.
it
It
is a
really
good match.
it's a good match. And Coco's my guy. I always have loved Coco Beware. I thought he was underrated. It sucks every time I turn on one of these pay-per-views and he's out here getting pinned. He's giving me not any similarity, but it's like turning on Monday Night Raw and then you watch Pin Balor catch
Yeah,
another call. You know it's gonna happen, but you still sit there, you're cheering the dude on because he's so
yep.
talented in the ring. Very similar in that sense. I love Coco Beware. He is so good in this match. And I was not familiar with the Mountie, but the Mountie is big. He's he kind of moves. He's got some moves, and he's not slow, and he's pretty athletic. So
Mm-hmm.
I was impressed with the Mountie. He gives a mean shoulder tackle, better than Cena. He really gets up there on it. And he leveled Coco a few times in this match. I have it highlighted. Coco Beware missile drop kick.
Yep.
He gives it from the top rope and lands on his feet. I have consumed a lot of wrestling in my 21 years of life. That might be the best missile drop kick I've ever seen before. We talked about the Rockers and the Orient Express being ahead of their time. So is Coco. And
Yeah.
so is the Mountie, to be fair. My highlight of this match is Jimmy Hart. Talking trash to Coco's bird
Yes.
in match. He is in the bird's face. And you guys know from our past reviews, I am in awe of how this bird does not move during a whole match. They must have had this bird on some stuff that we cannot talk about on this podcast. But this bird is just standing still. And Jimmy Hart is this close, finger in its face, talking trash. You see what's going on out there? You see what's going
Ah.
on? And
Oh,
the bird is just sitting there taking it. Another reason Jimmy Hart is my MVP is that man is dressed to the nines. If we don't get suit jackets with the earthquake on them, we're doing it wrong, Brian. We really are. That is our guy. Jimmy Hart
oh,
has a jacket on and it's bright red and yellow and it almost looks like he's repping Hulkamania. No, it's Quake on the back.
so
And
good.
that is just such a great touch. I love that. I, it makes me laugh because now in today's wrestling, you have managers and they only manage one or two guys. Like Heyman only manages one or two guys. And if we're being honest, Heyman's really the only manager we got.
Yeah, really.
So to see something like this, it's pretty cool. I love the multi-management from Bobby the Brain or Jimmy Hart or even Mr. Fuji. I think that stuff is super cool.
Yeah.
I really like that. That's something that this age of wrestling does a lot better than ours currently. So, man, I really enjoy this match. Brian, do you got any thoughts on it?
Like everything you said, like we're so in agreement on pretty much everything on this pay-per-view. Spoiler alert, everybody, but it's a good one. If
It
you've
is.
gotten this far in and you haven't started watching it yet, go watch it, come back and finish with us. It really is worth your time to watch it. It's super entertaining, and this is one of those examples of it's another match to have a match on the card, and you put two good workers in there. The Mountie has just been like this is fresh, brand new gimmick Mountie. Jacques Rougeau, formerly of the Fabulous Rougeaus, uh, has come back now in singles competition as the Mountie, later goes on to form the Quebecers. And I love all of Jacques Rougeau's work because he's such a good heel. He has such a punchable face. Like he exudes heel. And I loved them when they were the Fabulous Rougeaus because I always loved their song All American Boys. Um, one day when we do our ranking of superstar theme song, that one's going to be towards the top. The Mountie is another great song. He doesn't have it yet. Once he gets his new theme song, The Mountie, like he gets over. Like people already wanted to hate him at this point and they weren't sure who he was totally. Once he gets his new theme song and he gets his cattle prod that he would use and hit people with the cattle prod, like he was over as a heel. And Coco, you can't even say anything else about Coco Beware. Dude can flat out work. And I wrote down on my note like the same thing as you. I said standing missile drop kick off the top rope.
Man.
And I don't want to say he made it look easy because I know it's not easy, but dude can deliver a drop kick, and when he does that missile drop kick off the top rope, it's awesome. He should have
Yeah.
won more matches. You are not wrong. Everybody liked him. He'd always get, a pop when he would come out. People love to see him and the Bird Frankie, but he never made it to that next level, which kind of stinks because Coco is really good.
Yeah, Coco's got a little bit of that dog in him, man.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing that you say everything or most of the things he does in the ring. He just makes it look easy. And
Yeah.
that's a compliment. He really does.
Yep.
But let us move on to our next match. We got the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, and
American
his
Dream, baby, Dusty Rhodes.
I don't do it like Brian, guys. I really don't. I really don't. I gotta take a class on these impersonations.
Baby,
They're
you just gotta slow down a little bit and just get a little sweet. That's all you gotta do. You all right, Will? Look at you,
we
little
got
Will, sitting over there. Look at him, pummel head, sitting there, doing his little podcast. Probably got his little brother Hank over in the background. Where's little Yoko at? Little Yoko! Little Yoko, where you at? Where you at, little Yoko?
we got the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, and his son Dustin Rhodes versus the Million Dollar Man and Virgil. I was a big fan of this match, and I think it's hard not to be a fan of any Dusty Rhodes match.
Yeah.
Once you hear that theme song hit, you know it's showtime. And even though Dusty is not, you can have your gripes with him. I know a lot of people say he's very overrated in the ring. There's no one that sells like Dusty. There's no one that moves like Dusty and makes his moves feel so believable. And that's why I love Dusty so much. Gold Dust, Dustin Rhodes, whatever you want to call him, looks pretty young in this match. I don't know how young he is in the recording of this, but last night as we sat down to film, I'm scrolling on Instagram and I get a little pop up from AEW and it's Dustin wrestling still to this day in 2025. And we're talking about a Royal Rumble 1991 review. That's crazy. Massive kudos to him. He is still doing it and he's still at the top of his game. So we don't talk much about AEW on this podcast, but
22 years old. He was 22 in
man,
this Rumble. He was a baby.
isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Crazy, man. So shout out to Dustin Rhodes. But that's not really where this match is at. It's really not. It's the Million Dollar Man and it's Virgil. And from the promo in the back before the match, building the tension and in
Mhm.
ring, building the tension. This is what this match is about. It's about after the match. Brian, talk to us a little bit about that.
So this match is, I was kind of talking about it a little bit earlier. This match is an important match on this card because this is the last time we see Dusty for like 15 years. So this is his exiting match with WWF. Um, and it's kind of the blow off match for the feud that he and Million Dollar Man have had. And so you're kind of ending that story with Dusty on the way out, but you're also setting up Virgil and Million Dollar Man, and this crowd was over for Virgil to finally stop taking all of the Million Dollar Man's crap, and it reminded me so much of like Otis and Chad Gable. It had that same feel to it where you're just like, man, you just keep pushing and pushing this person. Eventually, they're gonna snap, and we see it happen, and the crowd pops for Virgil. And throughout the whole match, you have Piper is really working and he's really selling Virgil, saying he throws one heck of a punch and that kind of stuff, really kind of building up Virgil because going forward to WrestleMania when we have Virgil versus Million Dollar Man, I'm pretty sure Roddy Piper is in Virgil's corner and he kind of has taken Virgil under his wing and trains him from this part going forward. So you have Dusty and Dustin doing what they do. They're entertaining to watch in the ring, regardless of what's going on. You're not going to beat Dusty. And then you have Million Dollar Man and Virgil with their story, and you have Piper on the outside helping sell that, moving that towards WrestleMania. It's really impressive. And again, I'll say it that the booking on this pay-per-view, top notch. They know what they're doing here.
Yeah, and you get to Virgil actually hitting the $1 million man. It's got to be the second biggest pop of the
Yeah.
night.
Yep. They wanted it. They were waiting for it.
Well, moving on, Brian, we'll actually rewind a little bit back in the show because right before the Dusty Rhodes match, we have some promos right before this match and leading into the Rumble. It's all the Rumble participants.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was great because anytime you get a Jake the Snake promo, it's money all the time. He does not miss. You follow that up, and he cuts a pretty stellar promo right into an earthquake promo.
Yes.
That's WWR gold right there. So
You gotta get the quake shake.
yeah, whoever
Whoa.
suggested this pay-per-view, thank you
Yeah.
very much because that's one of my highlights of this whole entire pay-per-view. But Brian, you got some more in-depth notes on this, so take us through it.
I don't know, but I gotta tell you, Will, that right there, you gotta cut that to a TikTok and just call it the quake shake.
Quake
Let's get it
shake,
going, the quake shake.
quake shake, and
Yep. Yeah, see if you can
I
throw
love
his song behind it.
yeah,
Quake shake.
quake shake.
It's good.
It
Um,
is.
yeah, so I love these. Like these are one of the things that I miss in today's wrestling, especially for like Royal Rumble and stuff, because we're not as campy as we were back then. I love these promos where everybody just gets a few seconds to say something. Everybody except Hogan. Hogan has to have the last one before the actual Rumble match starts, right? So that's why me and Will said, you know what, we'll just do them all together so Hogan doesn't get to get his special spot. We're taking it back. Hogan said that
Yeah,
didn't work for him, brother, that he doesn't want his promos with everybody else's. Well, guess what, Hulkster? We're taking it back, man, and we're putting you back with General Pop.
that's
Everybody
right.
together or nobody at all. Um, but you're right about Jake the Snake. And the thing about Jake the Snake is he is I always like to harp on the telling a story throughout a match, and they've been doing it this whole pay-per-view, and now they get to the Royal Rumble, and even in Jake the Snake's promo beforehand, he's telling the story with himself and Rick the Model Martel because their story is building up to WrestleMania 7 and the infamously awesome blindfold match that they had, which I love that match. It's so good. Everybody you know what? Nobody watched that yet. Wait till we do a retro review or a retro rewatch of WrestleMania 7 so you can see that blindfold match. Um, but Jake does such a great job of telling you in his promo everything you need to know about what he's doing in the Rumble. He's looking for Rick the Model Martel. And Rick the Model Martel throughout the Royal Rumble match is kind of doing the same thing once Jake gets out there. We'll get there. Um, we get to see the early days of the Undertaker. We get to see one of the Undertaker's first pay-per-view promos that he ever did. So it was awesome to see him there with Brother Love. That was kind of cool. Bobby Heenan and Mr. Perfect, they're always great. No matter
Mhm.
what they do, those guys are always awesome with the promo. Then I'm going to get to Hogan's. What was that? Like, Hogan's was embarrassing. He can't even get through it without messing up Saddam Hussein's name. And he tries to cover it. Mean Gene does everything he can to help. It was not a great promo by Hogan. Like, he was stumbling all over himself, so not great by Hogan, but it's a good thing he got to have a special one right beforehand. And he did
Yeah.
do the thing too where he's like, I'm dedicating this to all the troops. And it's like, you're giving away the ending, buddy. What are you going to do? Not win now and break everybody's heart?
Oh yeah. No, I was a little thrown off by that because it does spoil the ending a little bit. I hate when wrestling does that and they give us the ending.
Mm-hmm.
That happened in a later Rumble. Maybe we'll get to that in a retro rewatch. Jerry the King is talking on commentary, and gosh, shout out Jerry the King. He was definitely a commentator.
Yes.
I don't know if I have much to say else outside of
Nope.
that, but he he says, "Wow, Randy Orton almost got eliminated, and he's supposed to win the whole thing." And, and then Randy Orton goes on to win the Royal Rumble. That's just one of my favorite wrestling moments ever because it gives away the whole thing. But even though we kind of predicted the ending right there and then from Hogan, it wasn't it was an okay Rumble. It
Yeah.
was. It wasn't my favorite, and I feel like that's because a lot of the guys I was looking forward to were actually in the card before the Rumble match. But that gives the opportunity for some people to step up, in my opinion. One of those being Rick the Model Martel,
Mm-hmm.
who I thought had a very stellar Rumble. He created the new Rumble record for the Iron Man with 52 minutes and 17 seconds. Shout out Rick the Model.
Yeah.
He did his thing. Unfortunately, the person that leads the Rumble in elimination is, of course, Hulk Hogan.
Yep.
We kind of knew that because that's not going to work for him, brother.
Nope.
So he had 7 of them. I want to give a shout out to The Undertaker because he had a solid Rumble as well.
Mm-hmm.
It was good. He comes in and eliminates Bret Hart, which I thought was great. It sets a statement for The Undertaker. And this is my problem I have with this Rumble, kind of all throughout the whole entire Rumble. And you'll kind of take us through the final 4 and the final 3 and who was in there. Does this version of WWF lack a little bit of power scaling? I would say so. Because you have The Undertaker come in and eliminate Bret Hart, who maybe at this time isn't as big of a star as I think he is. But watching it back, it's just crazy to me as a person who knows who these people become. And you see Taker take out Hitman. And then you see Hawk take out The Undertaker,
Mm-hmm.
which I just think watching that live is crazy to me. That being said, I understand that we're in a different era of wrestling and The Undertaker's brand new. Maybe Bret Hart's just kind of still getting his own feet. Maybe he's still a part of a tag team. But just watching this all take place is pretty crazy. I thought the Hammer had a good rumble. He was in there a really
He
long time.
was in there a long time.
He
Yeah.
was in there 40 plus minutes.
Every time I wanted to laugh and go, man, he's still in there. Why is Greg the Hammer in there still? And then at a certain point, I was like, man, Greg the Hammer's still in there. And
Yeah,
like I was kind of impressed.
he was.
Mm-hmm.
I have two more notes on people I want to shout out in this Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
Texas Tornado.
Yes.
He got a big pop. He really did. I'm pretty unfamiliar with his game, and maybe you can enlighten me on that in just a second because I briefly remember him. And then it's my first time seeing Power and Glory in the
Yes.
ring
Yes.
at the same time, even if it was just for a brief moment, because I believe Power, who is Hercules, right?
Yep.
Last actually pretty deep in the Rumble. He was in the top 10, I want to say. So he lasts a little bit longer than Paul Roma.
And
But
Rumble was in there for a decent amount of time too. Like it was no walk in the
yeah,
park for him. He was in there for
right.
a while.
Yeah, they had a good showing. So shout out to Power and Glory. That's about all I have. Hogan gets Valentine out, who had 45 minutes, as Piper made sure to tell us. He was very enthusiastic
Yes.
in the whole Rumble. Like when number 18 happens, I thought that that was supposed to be Roddy Piper because
Yeah, you said that.
he was juiced up. He was ready to go. But that is supposed to be Macho Man Randy Savage, who we presume to be taken out by the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, or hiding and doesn't want to come out because last time we saw him, he had locked himself into a locker room.
Yeah.
So yeah, still playing that story though. So I mean, they're still trying to help tell that long form story over the course of this pay-per-view to set it up with Macho King and Ultimate Warrior, and they're doing a good job.
Yeah. And this match really picks up when we start quaking and shaking. Brian,
Jake.
take us through the effect that the earthquake had on this match.
Man, Quake, I'm realizing since we've been doing this podcast just how much I love Earthquake. Like Earthquake is so gosh darn underrated and he's so good with everything that he does. He changes the whole dynamic of this Royal Rumble when he gets in it because he's such a huge man in the way that he can move. It's believable that nobody can get him out and that he's a force in there. Man, it is believable that this guy is just a force of nature that you have to deal with in that ring. He sells it, everybody else does. We talk about it all the time. The way that he hits those ropes, nobody else does that. It's so awesome. I love Earthquake so much.
Yep.
I have a note. It's a shame Power and Glory never got a better push. So I like that you kind of commented on our boys Power and Glory because I always thought that they deserved a little bit more than what they got. Uh, Jake the Snake in this thing. You have Jake and Rick Martel in this match continuing to tell their story. It's great long form storytelling because as soon as Jake gets in the ring, he makes a beeline for the model and those two go at it. And before Jake gets to the ring, I think it was before Jake gets there, Tito Santana gets into the ring and he goes right after Rick Martel, which is another older storyline when they were Strike Force and they split up because Rick Martel abandoned Tito Santana in the ring. So you have former tag team partners. So even when they don't have an active feud going on, those guys being able to do that in the ring, it adds a little something extra. Like
Yeah.
instead of Tito just getting in the ring and just being a part of what's going on, he gets in there and he can get a little spot in that gets a reaction from the crowd because we never got a blow off match with Tito and Rick Martel for whatever reason. We just never got that, which was a shame because when they broke up, it was a big deal. So you got little things like that going on in this Rumble that are so good. Um, I have written down Taker was already over, and it's only been 2 months. He just came out to Survivor Series 2 months earlier, so He is fresh as a daisy in WWF, and he's already over. Um, oh, here's another thing that I love, and you kind of hit on it earlier. I said at one point in this Royal Rumble, we had on the outside of the ring, we had Mr. Fuji, Slick, Brother Love, and I think Bobby was out there. We had a ton of managers outside all at one time. I miss seeing that. Like
Yeah.
nowadays, it's usually another member of a faction or something who's out there. But I miss the days, especially at a Royal Rumble like this, because they were all such characters. Like every one of those managers is such a gimmicky character, but it worked at the time for what they do. And it was just so nice to kind of see that and go, there's action outside the ring that's not involving the people in the ring.
Great point. Yeah.
You know, they're like we get Paul Heyman now, and we've talked about it recently, and what a great job he does on the outside of the ring, helping to uh, speak without a voice when he just makes his facial expressions and his reactions during a match when his guys are in there. And you go, everybody was like that back here in 91. All of those managers had that same thing, just in different ways. So when you have all those personalities on the outside of the ring for this Rumble, it just gives it a little added oomph of enjoyability and entertainment. And I kind of wish that we'd go back to having managers again. Uh, Huge pop for Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Yeah.
Holy, holy moly. I
You
know
got
the
over.
crowd was loving to chant USA in this thing, but holy cow, were they
Yeah, they
over.
were.
Woo!
Yeah,
Man,
they loved Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
holy cow. Uh, oh, I love that Hogan and Tugboat get into it in this Rumble. I think Hogan eliminates Tugger, which is funny because earlier in the promos, Tugboat is saying how, even if it comes down to me and the Hulkster, I'll do what I have to do to throw him out there because it's every man for himself. And he does this whole tugboat thing. And you go, geez, you didn't have to call out Hogan like that. We get it that you guys are buddies and it's every man for himself. But then they do kind of get into it, showing that in the Royal Rumble, it's every man for themselves. It's friend versus friend, foe versus foe. It doesn't matter. So I thought that that was a nice little touch that nobody there would have thought that Hogan would eliminate his best buddy Tugboat. So that was cool to see. Uh, did you notice when Mr. Perfect gets eliminated? Did you notice Bobby Heenan on the outside?
No, I didn't.
Dude, you got to go back and watch it. Everybody make sure when you're watching this Rumble, pay attention when Mr. Perfect gets eliminated, just showing how great Bobby Heenan is. He's got his towel in his hand the whole time, the towel that Mr. Perfect comes down with.
Yeah.
He has it timed so well. He's by the ring, and when Perfect gets thrown over, he takes that towel and he throws it and whips it behind his back so high and far into the crowd. It was just such a cool little thing that helped show his aggravation and anger that Mr. Perfect got eliminated. It was just one of those little things that sometimes go unnoticed, but if it wasn't there, you probably wouldn't notice it. But because it is there, it gives a little extra seasoning that makes everything else taste better. And again, it's why Bobby is the GOAT. Um, Here's the final three. We'll get into the final three here. I've made this joke before. I think the joke I made was usually in Royal Rumbles, we'll get to a final three, and it'll be a case of which one of these things doesn't belong here. And I believe I said Hogan, Earthquake, and like Barbarian. And you go, well, we know Barbarian's not going to win this. The final three in this Royal Rumble: Hogan, Earthquake, and Nasty Boy Knobs.
Oh
First
God.
three people left in this match. Nasty Boy Knobs is not winning this Royal Rumble, but it's awesome that he's there at the final three because you have two heels versus the only babyface, Hogan. Like, I thought it was kind of a cool final three, and it worked. Like, it's silly because it's Nasty Boy Knobs, but boy, was it entertaining. What did you think about it, Will?
I I just did not understand why Nasty Boy Knobs was in there. I did not get it. You had so many credible guys that could have filled that third spot,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes wrestling is just great in that way that you can have a guy that you just don't see being in that final three spot being there. And man, it was Nasty Boy Knobs this pay per view. It was. It was his time to shine. And he had some weird alliance going on with Earthquake.
Yes.
Didn't make a lot of sense, but you know, he was there. What I do want to say is every once in a while, that dude in the final three that you just don't think is supposed to be there,
Mm-hmm.
he wins. He can get it. NXT did this recently. Miles Bourne
Yeah.
is main eventing NXT Battleground
Yep.
against Obafemi, and he's made a name for himself. He really has. I'm a huge fan of his character. I'm a
Yeah.
huge fan of him. I'm not saying he is Nasty Boy Knobs by any.
No.
He's not,
No.
but the way that this is a positive thing from wrestling. Back then, there was no way Nasty Boy Knobs was winning that Rumble.
Right.
Now we have this unpredictability where
Yes.
Jey Uso's in the ring with John
Yep.
Cena and Logan Paul, who might be the Nasty Boy Knobs of that group, but you can
Yes.
still have these unpredictable wins, and that's a way that wrestling has evolved. So shout out to this current WWE, and that's sometimes the beauty of watching these old pay-per-views is you can see how the business has evolved and see how the business might need to go back on some of these old tendencies that they used to do. That being said, they stole this from my boy Quake. This was
He
supposed to
did.
be his moment.
It
This
was.
was supposed to be his moment. And I just knew, I knew that Hogan was going to throw him over the top rope. And when he did, shame. I got up. I didn't even stick around for the.
No.
I didn't stick around for it. I walked up and I walked out the room. I was actually pissed. I don't know. Was pissed. I knew it was happening, but when it happened, I just felt bad for my boy Quake. Definitely a dude that should have got a world title opportunity. His work is so good.
Yeah.
Shout out to Earthquake. We can't do it enough on this podcast. So,
Man. You know, I was watching it and I'm like, God, I love Quake so much. And it was making me preemptively angry because I know that Hogan wins. And it's kind of bittersweet because they kind of use this finish in this Royal Rumble as the blow off to Hogan and
yeah.
Earthquake because they never really had that big time match. You know, it was never a title match. They never got a WrestleMania match. You know, it was SummerSlam and it was, fizzling out. So they kind of use this as that blow off for those two. And, like I said, it's kind of bittersweet because it's when you're Earthquake, once you're not in that feud with Hogan anymore, you start to slide down the card because Hogan has vanquished that monster, so now he needs a new one. It just breaks my heart that once he was done with Hogan, he fell down the card. We put him together with Tugboat, and he becomes Typhoon, and we have the Natural Disasters who just got into the WWE Hall of Fame this year, which I made me so happy to see that. Uh, but it was a shame that Quake really didn't get, a title run because that would have been, he would have been kind of the perfect version of Yokozuna. I mean, you could have had him be a monster for a while, and they kind of squandered it.
Yeah, it's such a shame that Quake just falls down the
Yeah.
card after this. And even if Hogan has to go over, you could have done my boy Quake a little better. You really could have.
Yeah.
You could have done him some form of justice. You could have gave him some form of a belt, and it doesn't happen for him.
Yeah.
And you get Hogan celebrating at the end of this pay-per-view. Like, I feel like I've seen after all of these reviews that we have done outside of WrestleMania 6, which he still kind of gets this poetic send off where it's
Yep.
not even really fully about Warrior.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's just time for me to take a step out of this era of wrestling and maybe go like a few years later and we're talking like Attitude Era. I just
Yeah.
need a different ending than Hogan being on top. Maybe that's just me. You guys let me know down below if you guys are some Hulkamaniacs. I don't know if our fan base is a bunch of Hulkamaniacs. I don't know, Brian. Maybe we have a bunch of Hulksters, little Hulksters down in the comment section. Maybe. I don't.
I think what we have is we have a lot of fans who are probably fans of this 80s and 90s rock and wrestling era of WWF. And I have a feeling when they were kids, they liked Hogan, but now as adults, we go back and they do the same thing that I do, and they find the nostalgia and entertainment they had as kids, but in different ways with these. I
Yeah,
appreciate Jake the Snake. I appreciate Earthquake and so many other elements so much more than I could as a kid. Being an adult and going back and watching these after all this time, especially with the product that wrestling is today, it's so interesting to watch these because we pick up on so many different things that I never noticed back then.
yeah,
And then there's some things that worked then that still work today. And it's so fun to go back and see that. And being a Hulkamaniac as a kid, that didn't carry over into being an adult because I go back and I watch this and I'm so sick of Hogan posing at the end of every pay-per-view. It becomes really obvious when you're watching these older ones, especially a few of them in a row, like you said, where it's like Hogan is at the end of every one of these things. And I wrote a note too at the end of that Rumble. I had to write it down after the fact because I remember I said it out loud. When he starts doing his Hulk up and Superman come back, and I just said out loud, I was like, God, I'm so sick of him hulking up. Like I'm so over the way that his matches work that it doesn't matter what happens because once we get to the end and he's down and out, he's going to start hulking up and just win the match. He's going to shake his big finger at you. He's going to point. He's going to do all of the Hulk Hogan things. Then he's going to throw you into the ropes, hit you with a big boot, and drop a leg, and it's going to be over. And that's so unsatisfying. I get why kids like it. It doesn't really work a whole lot once you get a little bit older. I appreciate the other things a little bit more now.
yeah. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. He almost pulled a reverse John Cena. Hulk Hogan was so loved when he was wrestling,
Hmm.
and now he is hated for one reason or another. I really don't like Hogan because his nonstop winning, it gets boring
Hmm.
after a while. And you saw that from the fans. They didn't like when Cena started winning all
Yeah.
these. There was kids like me and women in the crowd chanting, "Let's go, Cena." All the adults were chanting, "Cena sucks." And now, as the tail end of John Cena's career is starting, it is a lot of "Let's go, Cena" from the adult fans. And me and the other Cody crybabies chanting Cena sucks still, which is hilarious. But yeah, he kind of pulled a reverse John Cena, which is crazy to think about. I don't know. Definitely tired of the Hulkster just a little bit. But man, what can you say about him? He did shape this era of wrestling. He really
He
did.
did.
So you can't point too many negatives at him. He is definitely the GOAT of this generation. You had him on your Mount Rushmore. You just
Yeah,
have to.
yeah.
That is the type of icon Hulk Hogan is for professional wrestling.
And at the time, it's true. It's not like he was not over with the crowd. It's not like the crowd didn't pop when he won.
Yeah,
And it's not like the crowd wasn't into him meeting up with Sergeant Slaughter at WrestleMania. They were. The story was over and he was over, but we're starting to get towards the end of that. I feel like once we get past WrestleMania 7 is when the crowd starts to change a little bit and they start getting sick of the Hogan winning all the time and people start to sour on him. And eventually once he gets to WCW and you get the NWO and Hollywood Hogan, and it's so funny that after the NWO stuff in the Attitude Era, what does he do? He's coming back now and he's red and yellow and he's coming out to Real American. So it's so funny how wrestling is cyclical that way because there's going to be another day when everybody's going to be cheering, let's go Cena.
love it. Love it. You can't not love professional
Yeah.
wrestling no matter what era you are in. Brian, give me. We really need to get an official
Yeah, we do.
down for these. I think we did. Sometimes we'll do two thumbs up, a thumbs up, a thumbs down. I think we go with the 1 through 10. I think we
Okay.
did that at WrestleMania, and I think you were at a 4 and I was at a 6. Brian,
Yeah,
what do
that's
you
true.
give it Royal Rumble 91? What is your official rating?
Oh, 9.
Yeah.
It's really high. This is a really good pay-per-view all around.
Yeah, I was gonna give it a 9 as well. And I know it might be a little corny that me and you are always on the same page with this type of stuff, but this is just a really
It
well
is.
put
Yeah.
together pay-per-view. And for me to give it anything lower than a 9, I would just be lying to our fans. I really would be. This is a stellar pay-per-view, and I'm not just talking about the Rumble. I think the Rumble might be one of your weaker points of the
Yeah.
paper. Everything else around it is top tier. It's
Yep.
top tier wrestling. From your Rockers match to your Boss Man match to the storytelling of Macho and Warrior and Slaughter, and then your storytelling of Dusty Rhodes and the $1 Million Man and Virgil, all the way through to the Rumble match. This is just a pay per view that
Mhm.
if you're not watching it right now with us as we're reviewing it, I definitely would recommend watching this. I had a lot of fun with this pay per view.
Yeah, and to add a finer point to it, you have Gorilla and Roddy Piper
Yeah.
taking you through the pay-per-view. It was just this is stellar work, and I wonder if the guys knew it at the time, what a great job they did, because it really is it's a really good pay-per-view. It's one of the tighter, self-contained telling stories that you're gonna see. Go watch it.
I had a lot of fun. Shout out to the person that suggested this pay per view.
Yes.
It was a treat. So, man, thank you very much because it was our first suggestion, and we appreciate that type of stuff, guys. Please comment down below if you guys want us to do a retro rewatch.
Yep.
I know my dad might be leaving a comment soon. He wants us to review some Attitude Era stuff, maybe
Yes.
some ECW, which would be
Woohoo!
a lot of fun considering, he wants us to go back and watch some crazy Sabu matches,
Yeah.
considering the recent passing of Sabu. RIP to an
Yeah.
absolute hardcore legend.
Yep.
So, shout out Sabu. There is content coming out on the TikTok very soon. Guys, after this, me and Brian, we're rolling it back again. We're doing some lists, and I know you guys love
Yes.
that over on the TikTok. So please go into the description, check out the TikTok.
Mhm.
While you're in the description, also tap on the Realm Paranormal podcast. Brian recently held it down for the team
Yes.
over on there, talked about what we do over here, and that is a great episode. So go check that out. And Brian, you got any more notes for him?
No, I am all noted out. This was just a fun pay-per-view, man. I had a lot of fun. I'm so glad that we did this one. Thank you, whoever suggested it, because this really was a treat. This was one that we didn't have to talk about, ironically, because it's so campy and cheesy. We actually got to enjoy this one. It was so much
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Until next time, I'm Will. That's my guy, Brian. Peace out, guys. Much love. We'll see you guys next time.
See you guys. Peace out.
Oh my gosh, I gotta talk about the promos before the match. They were
Oh yeah.
so the ultimate puke.
The ultimate puke.
Was so
Oh man. Dude.
Well, Realm family, obviously, a little different look from me today. We had some technical difficulties last night. We got about, where were we, Brian? About halfway through the Rumble match itself.
Yeah, we were going, yeah.
We were going, and we realized that we forgot to click record. And that's
This
sometimes
guy right here
sometimes
forgot to
happens.
hit record.
Sometimes when you're having a good time doing this, you just forget the easy things. So, that's part of it. It's part of it. So we're back here to finish up our Royal Rumble 91 review.
Man,
And
everybody, we're going 2 days on Rumble 91. And another fun behind the curtain thing is, I'm like, oh man, we got to re-record that. I got to put my Rhea Ripley shirt back on so it's seamless. Will comes on, he's like, I didn't wear the same thing. Who cares? So it's so funny that like
yeah,
we have two totally separate ideas and they're both funny.
yeah, man. That's on me. That's on me.
That's the kind of comedy gold you guys get with us.
Yeah, it is.
Otis and Tozawa.
Speaking of comedy gold. Yo, that's too good, man. That's too good. I'm gonna have to take it. I'm gonna have to take it from the top. All right, we got
that one hit me.
that. Yeah, you went in full character right there.
I felt the moment where I like fell into Dusty
Yeah, you were Dusty right
because
there.
I stopped doing a character and I started talking. Look at you sitting there. You're having a good time laughing, talking about your wrestling.
After this podcast, man, you should be a wrestler. You really should be a 2 second calling, man.
Oh God.
You gotta try it just one time. Brian, we got our first match. The Rockers. Okay, hold on.
Oh God. I know now you're gonna say it.